The Kingdom of Yugoslavia entered World War II in a state of internal political instability and external imbalance. The government of Regent Prince Paul adopted a playing both sides approach by signing an agreement with the Axis power while simultaneously attempting to maintain friendly relations with the USSR, England and France. Consequently, they found their country alone against Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy, who quickly took advantage of the situation and attacked Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia capitulated quickly. This happened on April 17, 1941. However, unlike in other European states, it was the leadership in Yugoslavia that capitulated, and even then, only part of it. The peoples of Yugoslavia, especially the Serbs, Montenegrins, Albanians, and Macedonians, were largely dissatisfied with the occupiers. Unlike the majority of Croats and Slovenes, they gradually initiated an extensive partisan resistance against the German, Italian, and Hungarian invaders. Great Britain and the USSR, to the best of their ability, provided support and assistance to the Yugoslav partisans. The problem was that the partisan movement in Yugoslavia was far from homogeneous. Two main groups emerged. The first, communists and leftists led by Josip Broz Tito, who were called partisans, and the second, right-wing monarchists and Serbian nationalists led by Dragoljub Draji Mihailovic, a colonel in the former Royal Army of Yugoslavia, who became a general. The latter entered history under the name Chetniks. Chetniks. In Serbia, the Chetniks have been historically known as the fighters against the Turkish conquerors, dating back to the late 18th and early 19th centuries. The monarchist patriots and Serbian nationalists led by Mihailovic adopted this name, and they were the first to stand against the occupiers. Relations between the Chetniks and the Yugoslav communists did not go well. However, it was the Yugoslav communists who were the most consistent in fighting fascist aggression. Whether it were Germans, Italians, Croatian Ustaša, or Russian Cossacks, or punitive SS regiment Voryak, which later grew into a brigade, the Chetniks always maneuvered between all of them, sometimes negotiating with the Italians, sometimes with the Russian punitive forces, but then they quickly broke all agreements and in the end fought with everyone and against everyone at the same time. Cruelty. The Chetniks were known for their, so to say, trademark, which was an incredible brutality, and which set them apart from Yugoslav partisans who fought under Tito. Of course, it would be naive to think that the partisans who supported the communists were angels. Anything could happen there, but usually among communists, atrocities were mostly isolated episodes. And as a rule, it was revenge on the Croatian Ustaša, Germans or Chetniks. The partisan leaders of Tito's detachment try not to harm the peaceful population. However, the Chetniks, like their ideological colleagues, the German Nazis, Italian and Croatian fascists, did not stand on ceremony with anyone, killing indiscriminately communists, Croats, Russian White Guards, Soviet prisoners and even Serbs, if they suspected the latter of ties with the communists. In the Chetnik units, there were so-called kolyachi, punitive executioners who were recruited to deal with both Yugoslav partisans and the civilian population suspected of helping partisans. These monsters operated mainly with knives and daggers. They could carve a star on the back or chest of the victim before slaughtering. Later, towards the end of the war, the Chetniks also brutally dealt with Soviet prisoners of war. In relation to the Croats, the Chetniks acted, in fact, identically to the Croatian Ustašas who massacred the Serbs. Here it should be noted that regarding Croats and Muslims, there was revenge from the Chetniks for their own people. After all, the Ustaši of Pavelic committed outright genocide against the Serbian population, according to the memoirs of the Russian fascists from the Voryak regiment Chuknov. During the entire 4-year occupation of Yugoslavia by German troops, the puppet government of Pavelic, who murdered King Alexander, supported by the Catholic clergy, was engaged in the extermination of Orthodox Serbs for the glory of God. Thousands of corpses of executed Serbs died one to another, floated along the Sava to Belgrade. Thus, in the vicinity of the city of Banja Luka, in one day the Croatian fascists killed more than 2,300 Serbs. Of them, there were 551 children. The Chetniks paid the Croats accordingly. If the Yugoslav partisans, those who fought on the side of the communists and Tito, distinguished the fascist Ustaša from the peaceful Croats, then the Chetniks did not stay on ceremony, which actually is quite understandable. After all, they were Serbian nationalists, just like the Croatian Ustaša were Croatian nationalists. Similar ideology and similar methods. According to post-war data, around 70,000 peaceful Croats are on the conscience of Serbian Chetniks. This, of course, cannot be compared with 700,000 Serbs destroyed by the Croatian Ustaša. However, the figure is also substantial. against all. In the fall of 1944, the Chetniks captured several Soviet officers by deception. They slit their throats, having first slashed their bodies with knives. After this incident, the Red Army soldiers tried not to take Chetniks prisoners. Tito partisans did not spare the Chetniks either. In essence, for the Serbs and Yugoslavs, it was a civil war. Chetniks killed communists and partisans at the first opportunity. The partisans paid them in the same coin. At the end of August, beginning of September 1942, a detachment of Chetniks from Herzegovina participated in the operation of the Italian occupation forces under the codename Albia. During the purges, this unit, under the command of Petar Bakovic, killed between 600 and 700 Muslims and Croats. Murders were carried out in various ways, mainly with firearms and knives. In the autumn of 1942, in Dalmatia, Chetniks, with the support of Italians, destroyed the Croatian village of Gata. They killed everyone, women, elderly people and children. And again, they mainly used knives. The body of a poor 10-year-old boy had 9 stab wounds. A 1-year-old child was thrown into the air and impaled on a bayonet. The oldest victim of this senseless massacre was an 87-year-old woman, and the youngest was a 9-month-old baby. Most of the houses in the village were burned. On the night of December 2021, Chetniks from the 1st Battalion of the Posavina Brigade surrounded the Serbian village of Vranići, 30 kilometers from Belgrade, whose residents were suspected of ties with partisans. 14 families were killed, a total of 68 people, 15 of them were under 17 years old, 35 victims were women, and 7 were over 60 years old. April 29, 1944, the Chetniks broke into the village of Drugovac, which a small partisan detachment was forced to leave. They drove the locals to the square and began the massacre. 72 people were killed, 120 houses were burned. The Chetniks repeatedly cooperated with Germans, Italian and Russian, White Cossacks and members of the Barak Regiment punitive forces to destroy partisan detachments. And at the same time, they were waging a guerrilla war with the occupying forces, such a two-faced position. It should also be said that the Serbian Orthodox Church was supported by the Chetniks in many ways, just as the Catholic Church supported by the Ustaša Croats. The end of the Chetniks. In April-May 1945, a significant part of the Chetniks went to the territory of Italy, where they surrendered to the Allies. However, Mihailovic refused to leave Yugoslavia and called on his supporters to continue the fight. In March 1946, the remnants of the Chetniks units were surrounded and Mihailovic was captured. This was the end of the civil war on the territory of Yugoslavia. Many Chetniks captured by Tito's army were also shot or sentenced to long prison terms. In Serbia, the attitude towards the Chetniks is still ambiguous. Many consider them patriotic heroes. Others accuse them of collaborating with the occupation authorities.